guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS 82 apostrophe, with episode number 7 of my crazy 5's. Oh, those insanely good monologues. Not sure how I came up with this one. I think I was just thinking about one of my favorite monologues, and I thought to myself, let's think of how many I can think up off the top of my head that are pretty good. So again, probably we'll come back to this again at some point. These are just 5, the one outside looking in, and these are good ones though. And actually the one outside looking in replaced the first one outside looking in, only because I revisited this film just recently and I forgot how good this particular moment is. And of course you see that up there. We are talking Fight the Future, the X-Files, which came out in 98, right between seasons 5 and 6 of the TV show. Went to the theater and saw it, of course, and do love that movie. So anyways, monologues. There are so many. We have, within this list of ultimately really 5, I do have a couple that do stand out to me. One in particular that I think is, God, it's so cool to watch. Anyways, so let's start with the obvious. Outside Looking In from 1998, The X-Files. I want to say it was 20th Century Fox, first released on VHS back in the day. Of course, my DVD copy never got outside of that, but the monologue I'm thinking in particular is Mulder's monologue to the barmaid, man, where ultimately I guess it's the they call me Spooky Mulder speech, in which he sort of goes on this little rant, frustrating rant, just about just the current moment in his life, and it's just great to watch. It's great to watch. If you've never seen the X-Files, well, you ought to, because I'm about to do a huge deep dive into the X-Files, starting with the pilot and go through all 11 seasons, and that is going to be fun. About a couple weeks that'll drop. Space 1999 is done, and the X-Files are coming. So Mulder's the Spooky Mulder rant to the barmaid in Fight the Future. All right, let's get it. Number 5. Number 5 was first brought out on VHS. I forget, VHS really went up a ways on. I wish I would have snagged this on VHS back in the day, for whatever reason, but Lionsgate put it out. It is an 05 film. Of course, it is from Rob Zombie, and you ought to know what it is. It is, of course, The Devil's Rejects. Perhaps one of the greatest follow-ups to an original film. In particular, Sheriff Wydell's legacy speech, man. When he's got the 3, and man, the power. He could end this whole thing, man, in the flash of a move of vengeance, and yet we get an awesome speech about the legacy of his family, the heritage, going way back, man, when they hunted down the old-fashioned way, man. They just hunted down the bad guys, man, and he reminds them that they're working on a level that most will never see. And there's just so much energy in this moment, and ultimately this is the best moment for Sheriff Wydell that he will get to enjoy, is the short amount of time of inflicting some pretty serious pain on these 3 that he's got sort of nailed down, tied up to these chairs. They ain't going nowhere, man. This is his opportunity, and the speech itself is one for the ages. I think this is one of the great moments in cinema history, listening to his, and it begs, man, for there to be, and I hate these words. I hate even the thought of most of it all the time. I just hate it. But I wonder what it would be like, man, if Zombie ever went back and did a sort of a period piece dealing with a new story, fresh story, but one where you could go back and see this see Sheriff Wydell's legacy back in the day when it's at its prime. But that speech, man, that speech that he gives to those three, to the Firefly family, or those three that are Otis and Baby and Sid Haig. Just, I don't know, just what an awesome speech, man. Number 4, first on video, I think in '91, CBS Fox put it out. One of the great rants of horror history, I think. Of course, in '90, comes out in '90, The Exorcist III. Of course, I'm talking about Brad Dourif, or the Gemini Killer's rant. It's broken up into a few pieces when George C. Scott's character goes in to see him. But there's one in particular where the Gemini, where Brad Dourif, man, is just just unleashed. And he just comes out, man, and just stands up as far as the chains will let him go. And I mean, the amount of energy that he puts off in his furious anger towards this detective and what he wants him to do for him. And ultimately, just as furious as it gets, it all sort of quiets right back down. And I love it where he's just like, oh, was I raving? And then he just back into the normal dialogue session. But Brad Dourif, man, he really brings it. And the opening dialogue, actually, between George C. Scott and his buddy there, is really good as well. When George C. Scott goes on his little rant about the fish, the fish that's in his bathtub. He can't go home until the fish is killed, right? It's an excellent piece of dialogue. But Brad Dourif, man, really stinking brings it in here. One of the great opening segues into film, I think, from 1980, Embassy put this out on VHS. And of course, I love showing this, man, my 4K of The Fog. And of course, we are talking about Mr. Macon's campfire tale of what happens to the Elizabeth Dane. And it's just, you would never believe that they just built that little set, man. And it's just amazing. But his tale, man, of the fate and how they lure this ship in, man. And oh man, it's a great little, got that really neat throwback sense of quality, I guess. And John Houseman, of course, plays Macon, right? He gives the tale, and it's quite an awesome way to open up the film. Studio Canal put out a really awesome 4K edition of this movie. One of my favorite John Carpenter films. Saw this on the drive-in as a kid. I think it played a double feature with The Legacy. It was interesting. But that campfire tale by John Houseman is pretty awesome. 1960. This one I don't think hit VHS. It was an MCA Universal hit. I want to say 91, 92. It hit VHS. It's hard for me to imagine it wasn't on VHS earlier than that, but that's just one of the years I came across. But it is the Late Dinner with Norman, man, from Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, man. And I forgot just how long that piece of dialogue is, man, when he just kind of goes on and on and on, and then you get this beautiful sense where she starts to pick up on this idea that maybe she stopped in the wrong place. But you know, she is sort of Janet Leigh there, she's sort of stuck between what she has done, the crime that she has committed, and maybe this opportunity that is unfolding before her to maybe turn around and go back and make it right. Of course, obviously we know she won't be allowed to do that, but then, you know, there's this contrast between that, what is kind of happening in her, and starting to realize that, wait a minute, this guy, man, this kid he's not right. There's something wrong going on here. And I think she probably makes a choice to go on and get out of there pretty quick. But unfortunately for her, Norman Bates has other plans. But just to hear him sort of go on and then talk about his mother, and then ultimately he starts to take something she says take offense to it, and his tone, the way he just sort of he's just sort of this laid back, sort of enjoying this opportunity just to talk to someone, but then he just starts to turn ever so slightly, and it's so beautifully done, even to the point where he starts to get a little bit upset, and it's enough to kind of unnerve her, and but ultimately he'll slink back into his more relaxed state, and ultimately I think he ends that off with something to the effect of, we all go a little mad sometimes. What a great moment and a great movie. And then number one, man, one of my favorite rants, again, powerful speech by one of the greats in cinema history. Again, a late VHS release, I think. Again, I'm 91 maybe. Seems hard to believe it wasn't on VHS earlier than that. But we are talking about James Whale's The Invisible Man, and specifically Griffin's power to rule speech that he gives to his, what ought to be his better half, towards the end of the film. And there's something about Claude Rains, man. He delivers, you never see him the entire movie except for like the very end of the movie. You finally see what he looks like. So he basically acts this entire film without ever using facial expressions in the way that traditionally actors get to do. Everything is hidden either by his invisibility or just with the bandages wrapped up. And yet there is that sense of power that is unleashed. You get to really know this person, and yet you've never seen the person. You can't make that connection to who this is. Obviously, if you know Claude Rains, I mean, you kind of get an image in your head. But by then it's the invisibility has started to set in, and he is starting to go insane. And this, I think, I dare say, this might have some of the most horrific elements of any of the early Universal monster movies, only because of what he ultimately does do with his invisibility and the amount of people that he does kill. I think it's forgotten that he really, I never really knew what to think about the remake that just came of late, but in the horror elements within that. But it only sort of kind of goes back to the roots of this film, and the horror that was there, although I thought done much more magnificently than anything in the remake. It's not the worst movie in the world, but what's her name there from The Handmaid's Tale was in it. She was pretty good, but nothing like Claude Rains, man. And his power to rule speech towards the end is one for the ages. Yeah, and I love him in Casablanca. He delivers some of the greatest lines in that movie. So Claude Rains, man, The Invisible Man, Griffin's power to rule speech, ultimately on the end. Number one, remember, I do everything chronologically, so no, it's really not about order per se and what's my favorite or least or greatest, but it's just easier to lay it out chronologically. Of course, Psycho at number two, the great late dinner between Norman and Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh. Number three, The Fog. John Houseman's great campfire tale at the beginning. Brad Dourif, man, and I think his most, maybe one of his most underrated roles was as Sheriff Brackett in Zombies Halloween. I thought in H2 he really did a phenomenal job in the aftermath of the events of the first film. What he brought, I think, was pretty amazing. But at a younger age, man, he had some power and fury to unleash, and this is a great moment for that. Of course, Sheriff Wardell, one of the great moments, he actually has the bad guys in the palm of his hand, and he can end this thing, and yet everything sort of goes to his head, and he's so drunk on his vengeance and anger and retribution, and all he wants to do is make these people pay. And he gets a little too caught up with that, and it's unlike his legacy speech, in which you can probably envision some really horrific criminals finding their lives come to the end, end at the end of a rope, as they're hung for the crimes they've committed. This is his legacy, but he's ultimately at the other end of it, and it doesn't come without its baggage, unfortunately. I wonder what that character could have been like if not for all that baggage. I know why he did it, and it makes him a little bit more. I guess it makes him more interesting. But man, that opening scene when they first arrive at the Firefly house, and he's just like, man, let's go what God made us to do. It just sort of harkens back to the love he has for his own lineage, and he wants so passionately to be able to carry that out, and he just isn't quite able to, unfortunately for him. And then of course, he ultimately has his end in that. And then of course, the outside looking in, Mulder's great. They call me Spooky Mulder speech to the barmaid at the beginning there. And of course, the great entrance of Martin Landau, who I got to spend 2 seasons of Space 1999 with, which was a lot of fun. So some great monologues. There are other ones that are, as great, and I'll probably return to this at some point, given a little bit more thought to it. But what are your favorite monologues? What are your all-time favorite speeches or rants ever given in your favorite movies that you just love going back and re-seeing? Drop them down, man. I check them out myself. And yeah, if I guess my Space 1999 is at an end. As I said, I'm about to launch into a huge series on the X-Files in a couple weeks. I hope you join me for that. And I kind of do got an idea or two what the next Crazy Five might be. But next is, of course, Italy's Holocaust next week. I do believe I'm going to look at Dario Argento's Inferno. I think I got the next 3 mapped out, actually, what I want to do. And then, yeah, so as always, man, we end these things off with Go Bills.